This episode, The Drywall Doctor. We re-interviewed Ray Anderson, the Drywall Doctor. Ray's been in the drywall business, I'm just going to say forever. Ray's forgotten more about doing drywall than the Handyman pros know how to in the first place. Ray has a successful YouTube channel and a very successful contracting business and was very gracious enough to share many of his secrets with us. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition's entitled The Drywall Doctor. And to help explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, what have you been doing? What has been going on this week?
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I have some projects that I've been doing for my neighbor. And absolutely, this rolls into our discussion with Ray. And it's all about, doing some drywall work at my neighbor's place. I have been a subscriber to Ray's channel for probably a year and a half now, and have learned so much about how to use drywall, how to tape, mud, the whole thing. And I thought I was pretty good at it before, but this is just really taking me to the next level. And Ray's got a great personality, and he knows just about everything there is to know about drywall. And he's been in that, like you said, he's been in the business for a real long time. So I'm looking forward to this interview with Ray.
Well, we had a great interview, and here it is. We're here with Ray Anderson, the Drywall Doctor. Ray, welcome.
Hi. How you doing?
Hey. Fantastic. This is great. This is John Ray, and welcome to the show. And you are the Drywall Doctor on YouTube. So You want to give us some background on your business and your YouTube channel?
Sure. Believe it or not, at 16, I just didn't want to go to school anymore. And I dropped out of school. And the company right down the street, it was a drywall company called Welch Drywall, came over to my house and asked me if I wanted to learn a trade. And I was like, sure. So they handed me a sand pole, a roll of sandpaper, and a 6-inch knife. And they said, sand these houses. I was sanding 5 houses a day. Every day I would sand 5 new houses. This is in 76. The housing boom was incredible, absolutely incredible. We were doing 5 houses a day. It was unbelievable. And that's what I did. That's all I did. And then eventually I got a pan and knife, and I started spotting screws and doing pre-fill. And slowly but surely I started to learn the trade. But one of the things that happened to me is when they put an angle box in my hand, and they said, here, run this angle box. And I ran it perfectly. Absolutely perfect. Never had a problem running an angle box. I just ran it.
Now for the audience, Ray, let me pause you. An angle box is?
It's a corner box for doing angles. It puts the mud on the angles and skims the mud out with this little head. I was always using a little 3-inch angle head, and you pump it up full of mud and you run the angles with it, and it just skims them out perfectly. So you don't have to run them by hand. So you run them out with the tool. So next thing you know, there's like 5 different crews on this project, and I'm putting the angles in for everybody. I'm just going from crew to crew because they were paying me $3 an hour. That's what the going rate was. So I was just making $3 an hour. And slowly but surely, I just kept with it. So I've been taping since, like I said, 1976. It's been a long time.
So why'd you start the YouTube channel?
I didn't want to. I was supposed to retire. Believe it or not, I was supposed to retire in 2015. 2015, I turned 55. I had been in the union all of this time. I was supposed to get a full pension at 55. I contacted them and said, hey, I'm about to turn 55. I'm coming for my pension. And they're like, I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, 62 now. And I was like, don't even tell me when it turned to 62. It was probably a week before I turned 55. So I had to keep working, and I hired this guy out of a 12-step group. He was coming to a 12-step group, and I hired him, and he had like 6 YouTube channels going, and I used to just post videos on my Facebook. I would shoot some videos and post them on my Facebook page, and I got a lot of views really quickly. He goes, I can help you with that. So he worked for me for about a year, and I said, let's try this. So we posted our first video, and it went crazy. It just went crazy. It was just on Durbonding. I thought everybody Durbonded. Listen, I was so naive with the people and what they were doing out there because I never watched anybody else tape. I was a taper. I did all my own taping. I didn't look at anybody else in the way they taped, but I thought everybody pre-filled before they taped. I never even would have dreamt not to. And they're telling me, no, don't do that, don't do that. I'm thinking, what? Where'd you learn how to tape? It's drywall 101. You always pre-fill before you tape. It locks everything in so you've got a solid surface, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. So it was a lot of controversy. But then finally the good tapers who really know what they do started chiming in. Yes, you always pre-fill, always pre-fill. I don't live that far from the USG, what do you call it? The USG
plant where they make the stuff.
Plant. Yeah. Not just where they make it, but where they test it too.
Yeah.
So the laboratories are right over here too, in Libertyville. And I don't do drywall the way I think, the way I want to do drywall. I do it according to their spec books, what they have and what they say to do. So I was really good friends with a lot of these people who worked for USG, United States Gypsum. And they would sit there, you have to do it this way, and this is why you do it this way, and I thought, all right, makes sense to me. And that's just the way I've done it for years.
Oh, he's one of those guys, John. He does it right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We hate you guys on this channel,
That really know how to do things right. You actually went to the lab.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, hey, they've come out and taken samples of my wall because I had problems. I did 2 houses once, and they look great. All sanded, finished. Painter painted them. They had them all trimmed and everything else. And then they come over and they get me because I'm working on this project. Then they said, what's going on? You can see every piece of tape on every seam and every butt joint throughout the entire house. And I'm like, I have no idea. The painter walks in and he goes, it did not look like that yesterday. So in one day, it looked great to where you could see every piece of tape and every seam on every butt joint. So USG came out and they took a big sample of the wall and they brought it into their laboratories and they tested it. They ran out of a product that they were putting on the mud, and it was strictly their fault, and it had delayed shrinkage. So for 2-3 weeks after I had mudded the walls and sanded them, the mud was still shrinking up. It was still shrinking, but it didn't show until all of a sudden it showed. So that USG paid me to completely skim out two houses. I had to completely skim them all out again and get them all ready for paint. Had I added no pox in my mud, had I done anything other than their recommendations, they would have said, oh, you didn't do this. It's your problem. And so I'm very avid about, hey, let's do it to their recommendations. Yep. That way I don't have to eat tens of thousands of dollars worth of work if something happens.
Yeah, get it. So we're kind of aimed at the DIY market, and then also because we're handyman, we do a little bit of drywall work, but we don't do it all day long. What are the most common mistakes you see being done in drywall work? What's really common? What could a first timer avoid?
I think probably one of the most common mistakes that people make is they use fiberglass mesh tape with regular conventional all-purpose compound. They think that they can put fiberglass mesh tape down and put an all-purpose compound on top of it, and it's gonna hold up. So you're going to have to use a setting type compound with fiberglass mesh tape. When you're embedding fiberglass mesh tape and putting it up, you need either the hard real Durabond or you need a lightweight setting compound with the fiberglass mesh tape. So that's probably one of the most common mistakes I've made. Fiberglass mesh tape is easy to use. Stick it on, mud it over, it's taped, right?
Yep.
Right. So, but if you use a conventional all-purpose compound, it's not going to hold up. It's just not. It's not hard enough to hold up. You're going to have to use a setting type compound with that. The other common thing I see too is when they're using paper tape, they leave too much mud between the tape and the drywall. So they put the mud on, they put the tape on, and they just lightly wipe it down. So you got this big crown in the seam because there's so much mud behind the tape. And then they just let it dry, and you're like, wow, I mean, my knife's rocking on top of the tape that's got a beveled edge to it. It's got a beveled edge. They just didn't wipe out enough mud behind the tape. And then the other common problem is they wipe out all of the mud behind the tape. So you go in there and the tape just peels off the wall because there's no mud behind it. They wiped it so tight that there's no mud behind the tape. There's this in between too much mud behind the tape and not enough to make it glue in. So you just kind of lay that knife down. You lay the knife down as flat as you can without raking your knuckles against the wall. You put the even amount of pressure, and you go, and you always start in the center and wipe to the edges. Always start in the center and wipe to the edges. Don't think you can start on one angle and wipe it to the next angle. Start right in the center of the tape and wipe to the two angles, and it'll be just fine.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about the different kinds of compounds. So there is the general all-purpose, which comes generally in a bucket, right? If we're walking down the aisle at any of the big box stores, you're going to see, what do you see when you go in that big box store? So help us out with that. Although we know the answer, but you give us the answer, because I know I'm going to learn one or two things here for sure. So,
well, first of all, you're going to have some bag mud. You're going to have some bag mud, and some of it's going to be a very hard mud. It'll be Durabond. It's usually in a brown bag, and it does not sand. It doesn't scrape. It's like liquid concrete. You don't want to try to tape with that. That's too much. And then you're going to have other bag mud that is going to say lightweight, quick set. It'll be a quick set, lightweight compound, and then they'll have numbers on them: 5, 20, 45, 90. They even have a 120, and that's how many minutes it's supposed to take for that mud to set up. So those are the types of different powdered compounds. They're setting up compounds. Then when you get into the boxes and the buckets of mud, what I like to say is pick it up. If it's really heavy and it says all-purpose, it's got a lot of glue in it. It's great for taping angles. It's great for taping seams, and because it's got a lot of glue in there. Then you have your other compounds. They'll say +3, or they'll say, what do they say? The other ones, Proform.
Proform, yes. And there's lightweight, and there's
lightweight stuff.
Yes, and it's a lightweight Proform, and it's an all-purpose compound too, right? But it's not heavy like the all-purpose. And that's great for topping and skimming because it sands real easy. Understand, this heavy all-purpose mud does not sand very easy. If you've got an edge on there, it's going to take a lot of work to sand an edge off. Well, if you've got the lightweight all-purpose, that sands a lot easier. It's got a very smooth finish, and it's easy sand. It's just an easy thing to sand. Now, you're going to have this bag mud, too, that's a setting type compound, and it says easy sand on there. Mm-hmm. They're lying to you. That does not sand easy. That's a setting type compound. It's much harder than the lightweight all-purpose. Okay, it's much harder than the lightweight all-purpose, and it does not sand easy. So they are definitely lying to you. What they're saying is it sands easier than Durabond does. because Durabond doesn't sand. It doesn't sand at all. You can't sand it. Let's say you just go outside and you want to sand a piece of your sidewalk down. Hey, I got this edge on my sidewalk, and I'm going to try to sand it down with 150 grit paper. Yeah, good luck.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. You got to grind it.
So what is the purpose of that specific product then?
The Durabond?
Yes.
I swear by it for pre-filling before I tape an entire house or a big wall or anything else. Yeah, I shove that hard Durabond in any gaps on all seams and all butt joints. And what it does is it locks that entire wall together. So I've got a solid surface from angle to angle, from floor to ceiling. I've got a solid surface that cannot push together anymore because I've shoved Durabond in all of the cracks. It's very hard. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't leave it there. I shoved it in and I wiped it tight.
Yes.
Right? So I didn't fill anything in. I just made sure that those cracks were filled with Durabond. Now I'll tape it with the all-purpose, just the all-purpose, the heavy stuff. And then I'll top it and I'll skim it with the lightweight all-purpose.
Now you're talking about then for the all-purpose mud, that's usually going to take what, at least 24 hours to dry?
Yeah, but you can with the new lightweight all-purpose, you can coat on top of it right away. You're not going to have a problem.
Okay. So you're doing it so this is just to help people understand. So this is basically a layered process. So you start off with you gap in between any joints and any place there's big cracks with a really heavy Durabond or with a mixed type product that's going to be much harder than what you actually sand. And then you skim another layer of all-purpose across, which you can sand all-purpose. It just takes a while. And you can do that. And then you come over with a lightweight. So you're basically doing three separate skims across the top of the drywall.
Yes, and now you've got it pre-filled, you've got it taped, and you've got it topped. Now, if you're good, you're going to put one more skim coat on top of that, and you're going to be ready to sand, and you'll have a level 4 finish. Right?
So what's a level 4 finish?
A level 4 finish is what we do up here in the Chicagoland area. There's no texture up here. There's no texture up here whatsoever. They're calling it a level 4. What I used to call it was smooth wall.
Okay.
That's what I called it. I called it, when I grew up taping, you had walls that you were going to texture, and then you had smooth wall, and then you had flat wall. That's what you had. That's what they called it. Now they call it level 3, 4, and 5. Level 3 is a textured finish. Level 4 is a smooth wall finish. And level 5 is a flat wall finish.
Got it.
Let me ask you, let me jump in here a second. So let me go back to taping. And one of the common mistakes that a lot of folks out there when they're doing their own taping is it starts to bubble.
Okay. You didn't get enough mud behind the tape.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of people have a problem with that.
Yep. It's what I would suggest you do is thin the mud down a little bit. Listen, when you grab one of these boxes of all-purpose, it's not made to be used right out of the box. You got to thin it down some. So you always add a little bit of water before you tape. I add a lot of water before I tape angles. My angle mud's pretty thin when I'm taping. My seam mud isn't as thin as my angle mud, but you have to break it down a little bit. And you're going to find that it smooths out, it feathers out real easy. The hardest thing to do in taping is the spread. Once you get the spread down, I was watching this guy on YouTube, and he's taking his knife sideways, and he's slowly mudding up the seam. And I'm telling you, I'm just gritting my teeth, saying, "No, stop it!" I couldn't watch him anymore. This guy had like hundreds of thousands of views because he was just doing it badly, really badly. But you couldn't look away. You couldn't stop looking at it.
Dumpster
fire. But the spread. So once you get the spread down and you get it right, oh my gosh, taping is easy. It's all about how you spread the mud. It really is. But you thin it down. Don't think you're going to take this mud right out of a bucket. I've never, ever, on any application, take mud right out of the bucket and use it right out of the bucket. I always thin it down. I'm gonna back up a little bit. I do sometimes, and this is when I do it, is the house is done, it's completely finished. I missed a light box here. I've got a bad light box over there. I got some little touch-ups that I have to do. Even a nail pop here or there. I will use the all-purpose, I will use the lightweight all-purpose, the pigmented +3, right out of the box. I won't add any water to it. And I can tape and finish the light box. Sorry, guys. I can tape and finish a light box in one coat. I'll rip the piece of tape, and I'll be able to tape and finish a light box in one coat. I can spot the screws all with one coat. I can do everything with just one coat with the mud right out of the box, but I'm going to have to come back the next day and sand it.
Yeah.
I can't get away with just doing it and walking away. The next day I have to sand it.
So that was, I'm glad you addressed the bubbling and now you talked about the screws. One of the things that I've seen and especially with the people that have done their own drywall, let's say they're finishing their basement and they're doing it themselves, is covering screws. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, Ray, is I'll go down and just kind of look down the side of the wall just to see how they did things, and you see all the dimples.
Yeah,
or
not just the dimples. Sometimes you see these big humps when they pile the mud on the screws. Yes, and I've said this. I've said this many times in my YouTube channel. Listen, it's better to put 5 tight coats on than to try to put 1 or 2 heavy coats on and sand it off. Trying to put 1 or 2 heavy coats on and sand it off never works, ever. It's better to go through and spackle it tight, spackle it tight, spackle. If you got to do it 4 or 5 times, by all means, far better than trying to pile it on. We talked about the layers. It's always layered. You've got your pre-fill, your tape coat, your top coat, your skim coat. And I found that the slower it dries, the better the finish. When things dry slowly, everybody wants it done today. Even the drywall work today, it's like a drive-through. Yeah, we can't paint this tomorrow? Listen, the drywall's not even up yet. And you want to paint this tomorrow? The slower it dries, the better the finish. If it's hot, and I worked in Arizona, I worked in Phoenix for 3 years. When it's really hot and no humidity, and you tape this and top it and skim it, and it dries just within hours with a blow dryer hot heat, it doesn't sand easy. It makes the mud harder. Even that all-purpose, the lightweight all-purpose that is supposed to be able to be softer and easier to sand becomes harder and harder to sand when it dries fast. So the slower the drying time, the nicer it sands, the easier it sands, and the nicer finish that you have.
So we've talked. So back to the big box aisle, because I'm fascinated now. I mean, I go down the tape aisle and there's it looks like 7 or 8 different types of tape, and we've talked about paper tape, which is basically paper, right? There's fiber tape. There's Fiberfuse tape. There's what else is there? There's some specialty tapes for things like Duroc and stuff like that. But tell us the difference between the various tapes and applications as to where you would use them.
If I'm talking to homeowners and if I'm talking to DIYers, just handymen and stuff like that, I would just sit there and say, listen, don't even hesitate. Grab the Fiberfuse for taping your seams and your butt joints. Grab paper tape for taping your angles. Don't worry about all of the other stuff. Okay, just because Fiberfuse lays very flat, you can tape it with all-purpose. And it lays very flat. And if how you talked about blisters on paper tape? Well, let's say you didn't get enough mud behind the Fiberfuse before you wiped it down. You can push that mud right through the Fiberfuse, right into the wall, and you can correct that blister on top of the Fiberfuse. You don't have to peel it up and get mud behind it. So it's a great product for homeowners. It's a great product for DIYers. You know, for me,
it's too expensive. That's what it is.
It's not just too expensive, but it doesn't seem to be as strong as paper tape. You know what I mean? But for a DIYer, it's beautiful, and it's not going to crack like fiberglass mesh. It's not going to crack like that. So you could just go ahead and tape it with your all-purpose. You're not taping fiberglass mesh tape with all-purpose. Right. If you're grabbing fiberglass mesh tape and you think you're gonna put it on the wall and you're just gonna coat it with all-purpose, it's gonna crack. It's going to. So get that notion out of your mind right now. But Fiberfuse will work. It absolutely will work. And if you've got some really bad seams where you're worried about them cracking and you don't want to use paper tape, they've got this extra strength Fiberfuse. It's a mixture of fiberglass mesh tape and Fiberfuse all in one. And I have used that, and I kind of like that for a full-length butt joint. So somebody didn't stagger their butt joints, right? So you got a full-length butt joint going from floor to ceiling, and they tend to crack. You need to tape those better than you do normal seams, normal butt joints, or anything else. I will use the extra strong Fiberfuse for something like that.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I just wanted to clarify one thing. So, folks, if you don't know what Fiberfuse is, it effectively looks, I would say it looks like fiberglass mat, like what they make fiberglass,
right.
Some like rough chop cut fiberglass. It's not the actual smooth fiberglass; it's the chop cut stuff. And but you'll see it in the big box. As we say in the big box store, you'll see it, and it just looks like a kind of this mash of like, it looks like OSB made out of fibers, basically. So that's to give you the difference. The fiberglass tape is very crosshatch. It looks just like little squares, and then paper tape is paper. It's basically paper. So that's just a little bit of a clarification, on the various different types of tape. So just I'm just going to synopsize real quickly. So number one, when you're doing drywall, it is a layering process. So we start off where we fill the gaps with a very hard product, and then we fill the top of that with a general purpose product, and then put tape on it. And for either paper or fiber, well, any of the three, just depending on what you're doing and depending on application, but preferred paper and or the Fiberfuse. And then we put a thinner layer over the top of that. And two, I want to make sure that we clarify that people, you do have to cut you don't use it straight out of the bucket. You're going to have to cut it a little bit. So add some water and mix it. Ray, what do you suggest to mix drywall with in it? Like I guess they used to be 5-gallon buckets. Now they're 4.5. But what do you suggest mixing the mud with?
Well, I have a paddle. That attaches to a 3/4-inch drill. Okay. And that's what I mix it with. But they also make these potato mashers, and a lot of times you'll see them next to the drywall stuff. Okay. And in Arizona, nobody used a drill. Everybody used the potato masher, and they mixed it up with that. And I've actually got some YouTube videos out there that I use that potato masher. I show people how to mix it up with the potato masher. It's funny because somebody was just saying they had one of those things and they were in New Mexico and they called them a bean masher in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Hey. You get up here, they call them potato mashers. Down there, they call them bean mashers.
Well, there you go. Different areas for different jobs, right? So
yeah, my wife calls it something to keep my husband in line with.
I thought that was a rolling pin. But anyway, that's beside the point. Johnny gets nervous when I get to his house and I take out the rolling pin. He starts to cringe a little bit. But anyway, all right. So go ahead, John.
So I was just going to ask. So kind of moving on. Maintenance items with drywall. When you look around at your drywall, and a lot of people will see things like nail pops. Cracks around the windows.
Yeah. Yep. Tape that's coming off.
There's all kinds of little things like that, and tell us a little bit about, how we can get rid of, like, especially like the cracks around windows. They seem to keep coming back.
Well, the thing about cracks around windows is, first thing I want you to do is look at the length of that wall. If that wall is over 30 feet, there's a good chance that you'll never get rid of the crack around that window. You're going to have to put it in a control joint. You're going to have to put in something so the drywall's got a place to move. But yes, you think about the windows. It's hot, cold, hot, cold. I mean, in the wintertime, it's cold. In the summertime, it's hot. And it's expanding and contracting constantly. You've hung a piece of drywall, and then you've cut the window out of the piece of drywall, so you compromised the strength of the drywall to begin with. So right there in the corner, the drywall is much weaker than if it wasn't cut at all. And it'll expand, contract, expand, and then it'll eventually crack up to the ceiling. I think one of my last videos, it was fixing one of those things, and you have to take a razor knife. You have to take a razor knife, and you've got to V pretty deep into that crack. And then you got to fill it with Durabond, the good stuff, right? If you just try to fill it with all-purpose or lightweight all-purpose or any of the other stuff, it's going to crack right back out again, because it's just going to push that back together when it gets cold and it contracts, or hot and it expands, or vice versa. It's going to push that all-purpose. It's not a strong product. It's just going to crush it, and it's just going to, here comes the crack right back. But if you fill it with Durabond and then tape it, it shouldn't come back. It should be stronger than the wall itself. It'd probably crack someplace else at that point.
Well, that's good.
and didn't crack there. Yeah, right. Now you get paid to fix the other crack.
The other guy's going to say it's called job security. It's beautiful.
That's right.
So things like other things like nail pops and because now most modern construction they're using screws, right?
Yes, but they still pop just as bad as nails do.
Yes, exactly. And also the corner beads are notorious. They seem to start to crack off too.
Not since I switched to the tape-on corner bead. I don't have a problem with that anymore. It's I love the tape-on corner bead. It's phenomenal. Matter of fact, I was just at one of those big box stores, and the guy's picking up all of this metal corner bead, and I told him, I said, this product here is just far superior than that product there. But his boss wouldn't let him buy it because they weren't familiar with it. But that tape-on corner bead, I buy super wide. It's called super wide tape-on corner bead. Guys, remember that, super wide tape-on corner bead. Google it, you'll find it. The stuff is incredible. I never get callbacks on any of my corner bead anymore. None. Absolutely none.
And is this a plastic product?
No, it's metal and paper. Metal and paper. Yep.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a good tip.
It's great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. There's a product out there. It's called Ultralight All-Purpose. It's not just lightweight all-purpose. It's Ultralight All-Purpose. And you can tape with it, you can top with it, you can skim with it. It's soft, it sands easy. It's a great all-purpose compound when it's a homeowner or a DIYer who's not familiar. Well, I have to use this to tape with, I have to use this to top with, I have to use this. You're still going to want to pre-fill everything with a setting type compound. Don't fall short on that. But if you get this ultralight all-purpose, you can tape with this, you can top with it, you can skim with it. Now you're just using one product to finish with. It is a great product. But the problem with it, this is the one downfall on it, it takes longer to dry. It does not dry sometimes even overnight. Ooh. It might take a couple of days for this to dry. But like I said before, the longer it takes to dry, the better the finish, the better the and that's why I kind of shy away from it, because I want to get things done in 3 or 4 days. And sometimes if I'm using the Ultralight all-purpose and I'm not in a dry climate in Chicago, this is not a dry climate. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it isn't. I mean, it might take me a week to 6 days to do what I normally could do in 3 or 4.
Yeah, and time is money in that case.
Well, it depends on how many jobs you got.
Yeah,
I can always go in there and say, "Hey, this job's still wet," so I can go appease another customer.
Right. Well, from our standpoint of working in the handyman business, one of our big challenges with drywall, just as a kind of in a general term, is that is the dry. We'll call it the dry time. I mean, I know it's for us because we do so many real repairs. Like somebody's punched a hole in a wall, or what you've been around the business, but you get a small repair, or our favorite is the plumber comes in and he needs to cut one bay out from the behind the shower, to replace the diverter valve, and then of course he doesn't do drywall, so they call us in to finish it, and I have to say that's one of our faux pas, I guess, is it does take time, and people don't really understand. People, meaning homeowners in general, don't understand the dry time and the length of time it takes, and then travel time and all that other craziness that goes along with it. So we always, at least I know I do. I struggle with it a little bit sometimes in trying to explain to somebody exactly how it works. We talked before the show, and you have a thing called a drywall first aid kit. Is this drywall first aid kit going to solve some of those problems? Maybe.
All of them. Everything that you just said. Yeah, I took a baseball bat and I smashed my corner bead, and actually in this room that I'm sitting in right now, and a full swing, smashed the corner bead and repaired that with the first aid kit. Then I took the end of the baseball bat, like where a doorknob goes through the wall.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so
we do.
I punched a big hole in the wall, and hey, I know you've done this before, where you show up at somebody's house and they want you to patch this big hole where the doorknob was, right?
Yep.
And what do they have on the floor stopping the door is a brick.
Yep.
And you're thinking, well, as soon as you move that brick, this hole is back.
Right.
So I tell them, if I see something like that, I said, listen, we got to get a door stop on here first before I patch this, because I don't want to have to patch this again. Patching things twice doesn't work very well. So I always tell people, get the door stop on here. Don't just use a brick or something like that. Get a real door stop on here before we patch this hole. And then I took a screwdriver and I punched a bunch of small holes. I took a magic marker and drew an angle, drew a line in the angle to tape an angle. Hey, this is a big crack in the angle. And I put a crack above the door and I taped that and finished that. But listen, I finished and taped and patched all of these things with one first aid kit. It's a drywall patch kit, one first aid kit. And I still had materials left over to do more. I'm thinking, wow, I could have made a lot of money. Had I been patching all of this stuff in different people's houses, I probably did $350, $400 worth of work. And I think I can sell these first aid kits for like $50, plus shipping and handling. They're heavy, so I can't just charge $50 and not charge for shipping and handling, because shipping and handling is a fortune. Because they're over 3 pounds. I've got 3 pounds of mud in there, and they're over 3 pounds. But they're really handy. It's a little lunch box. It's a little lunch kit. So after you've used up all the mud, there's a Tupperware thing in there that you mix your mud in, right, with a knife and everything else, plastic knife. But after you use it all up, you throw sandwiches in those Tupperware things and throw them in the lunch box and give me more advertisement because it has my name on it.
So Ray, I wanted to clarify something. This is a kit that you have. This is an exclusive. Is it exclusive? It's something you've developed, right?
Well, you know what? I didn't make the materials that are in it. Right. But I've used them all.
Yes.
Every single thing that I put in this kit, I've used, I like, and I put it all in there. And so it's And yes, it's something I woke up in the morning. My YouTube channel was just starting to take off. I don't even think it was a year old. And I woke up one morning and I thought, a first aid kit. I'm the drywall doctor. Let's make a first aid kit. I know what to put in there. And so
Brilliant.
After I put everything in there, my lawyer told me you can't do that. so I had to change things. So I actually have a new company that sells these now because I had to develop another company to do it, and the drywall doctor was taken. So I've got a company called the Drywall PhD, and it goes along with my email address because my email address is the drywallphd@gmail.com.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
With
that,
that's how people can get a hold of you to order up some of these drywall first aid kits from the Drywall Doctor PhD, or not drywall, the Drywall PhD at gmail.com, right? I like it.
Yes. And then not just that,
great.
or they can just go to my YouTube channel, and you'll find it on my YouTube channel. My website will be up on there, and you can just go right to the website, order it right off the website off my YouTube channel.
And the YouTube channel is called the Drywall Doctor?
Yes, the Drywall Doctor on YouTube. I guarantee you, you just type in the Drywall Doctor videos or Drywall Doctor YouTube, and you can't miss me. I'm there.
You're there.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'll
awesome
vouch for that.
And we we would love to have you back on the show, Ray. So you've just given people how we can get a hold of you, but you've got now. I mean, I've learned a ton here already myself, and I know we definitely have to schedule you for another show because we want to get more in depth. This was basically Drywall 101. We need to get to Drywall 101.5, and then we'll get to Drywall 1.2 because yikes. I mean, there
is so much to this.
There is so much.
And we haven't even touched on some of the things. Larry and I will always talk about the new improvements in building materials.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's incredible. Now, I was in the computer business for 33 years, in software, and things moved really fast, and I just never thought about how fast they moved in this industry. Yeah. But it is incredible, all these new products and things. And I noticed that there's a couple of, like, your brand new YouTube video that you just put out, and there's new things coming out all the time. So, I mean, that's kind of some of the things that we'd love to, be able to discuss with you at some point as well.
Yeah. So we definitely have to have you back on the show. So once again, give us your contact information, and then we're gonna wrap this one up and get ready. We'll have a whole list of new questions for you on the second round. Trust me. I can tell you already. So
well, I just wanted to say one of the big things that has changed drastically is drywall itself. Drywall is 40% lighter than it used to be. Now, if you pick up 2 sheets, it's 80% lighter, and if you pick up 3 sheets, you're 20% lighter.
So that's a good way to look at it.
But,
so there's no excuse to be able to carry 3 sheets by yourself.
Yeah, the lightweight drywall, I'm telling you, the new guys aren't familiar with the old stuff. They're just not familiar with the old stuff. But I am. And oh my gosh, this lightweight drywall is a back saver. It's incredible. Yeah. And it's more rigid than regular drywall used to be too. The half-inch lightweight drywall is more rigid than the old 5/8 used to be.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's all those topics. I mean, we definitely have to have you back on the show. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So you can get a hold of me by just finding my YouTube channel at the Drywall Doctor on YouTube, or you can just email me at the drywallphd@gmail.com.
All right. Well, Ray, thanks for being on the show. And like I said, we definitely will have you on again. John, you have anything else?
No, Ray, thanks so much for being on. And, for everybody out there, you got to subscribe to his channel. It's fantastic. You'll learn a ton from Ray.
Well, thanks for having me, guys, too. Thanks for thinking of me.
Perfect.
Sure.
1,
Wow, that was a great interview, Larry. And I'm really happy that I reached out to Ray, and I really want to thank Ray for taking his time and for being on the show. I know that we're all busy, and he just gave some fantastic advice about drywall. This is kind of drywall 101 right here. We haven't even scratched the surface on this, and there's so many good tips and things to learn from that. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think? Some of the things that you walked away with.
Yeah, I've got to say it really was a great interview. It really was a very base level of drywall information. I think the biggest thing I came away with with 4 items basically that really hit home. First off, that the drywall taping process is a composite process, meaning he's using different materials at different stages of that. So he takes and actually fills the gaps with Durabond and or the mixable drywall compounds, the quote easy sand that aren't easy sand. They're not easy to sand, but they filled. It's a different product and it has a different specific thing. So he uses that. Then he uses regular all-purpose compound to put the tape in. We talked about the different kinds of tape, which I use Fiberfuse anyway. But he says for most DIYers and for most people that are not professionals, use Fiberfuse. It's a little more expensive, but it's got some advantages to using it. It doesn't crack and it's easy to. You don't get bubbles in it, which I thought was really a good one too. I knew that, but I still, it's good to hear it confirmed by somebody else. And then after that, you put a lightweight compound on it, and then you sand it. And I always knew it was a multi-step process, but what I really learned is the composite nature of it now, and what the differences are in the different products, and why they do what they do, and why they're actually there. Because as we always say, going down you really go down the drywall aisle or any of the aisles in a big box store. There's nobody there to tell you. Yeah, and there's nobody there to tell you what it really does. No. Right? So that was one of the big things I got. I had a takeaway that it is a very time-intensive process. I mean, I knew that. I've always known that. Most of the time-intensive the reason it takes so long is because there's dry time. That's always the big thing. You got to just let the stuff dry. Don't try to sand it too soon. He didn't say that, but I know that because I've tried sanding it too soon. It doesn't work real well. And another good takeaway was more thin coats are better than thick coats, and definitely thin the drywall out. Don't use it straight out of the bucket. Put some water in it, mix it up, thin it out. And I think probably the biggest takeaway, John, is be patient. Be patient.
Yes,
it's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen quickly.
Right. What'd
you come up with? Did you come up with anything?
He's got a great sense of humor.
Oh yeah, what a funny guy.
I concur with all your takeaways here. There's just so much to learn from a guy like that, and that's why I subscribe to his channel. So clear and concise, easy to understand how all this stuff comes together. So those are kind of my same takeaways, Larry. So
we'll definitely have him on the show again, because we really didn't we didn't even touch the surface on this stuff really. I mean, there's so many more things we didn't talk about, doing corners or blah 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 blah. So much more. So it's crazy, John. I was in the spaceship the other day. It lands out in front of my house. And I walk in there, and they don't use drywall mud. I don't even know what that stuff was, but I'm not going to say what I'm thinking. But anyway, what did you do?
I think he's looking for the drywall repair kit.
It's probably
the first aid kit is what I think they were looking for. The
drywall first aid kit sounds like a plan to me. Well, folks, that was probably the worst outgo for the spaceship has landed. Do we look at it or do we take it apart? That we've done since we've been doing this. But hey, I thought it was pretty good. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you want to hear John tell more jokes, please send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. You can go to our website and leave us a message. You can go to that's handymanprosradioshow.com. You can join our Facebook group. That's at Handyman Pros, or you can follow us on Twitter at Handyman Radio. But we really like the ins and outs, and we'd certainly like to get some of your questions on the air. So we're here to help you. It's really what our goal is to help you save time, money, and aggravation. And if you contact us, we will do our best to get quality people like Ray on, so that we can get some of the mysteries of things like drywall taken care of. Right, John? So
that's absolutely right.
All right. Well, folks, we will see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.